So I'm joined once again by Dermot Daly, the CEO and founder of Tapadoo and co-founder of Ool, which we're getting closer and closer to talking about at length one day, I know. Am I right in saying tickets have gone on sale for Ool at this point?
We have sold 2 batches of tickets so far. So what we're doing is and they've sold out very, very quickly. So we are kind of designing the conference around numbers, and depending on how quickly it sells out, we may sell more. Right now, as of today, there's none on sale.
Wow, okay. That's a good position to be in.
Yeah.
Okay, and so if tickets are going on sale again, how will people know?
So the only way to find out is to sign up to the mailing list.
Okay,
so
right.
the mailing list at ool.ie.
Okay.
We do have a Twitter account, and we do warn people that you should be on the mailing list, but the mailing list is the main way we're keeping in touch with people who are going and people who want to go. Okay,
fair enough. All right, so we're going to come back to that another day. Okay. When you've got speakers announced and things like that, all the gory / interesting detail.
Yeah, well, we've a couple. We did let loose a couple of speakers in the last couple of weeks. So the ones we can tell you about are 3 from last year, which is Jim Dalrymple, who runs The Loop, Matt Gemmell, who's kind of a well-known blogger and programmer, and Jennifer Brook, who was head of UX for the New York Times when the iPad was launched. So she was on the stage with Steve Jobs. We've also added to that Guy English, also a well-known iOS developer, but he also runs the Singleton Conference in Montreal. And we've added Jason Snell, who is the editor-in-chief of Macworld Magazine.
Macworld, yeah. Very good. Okay, super. Wow, that's not a bad list for you, considering you're going to be adding more to that. So that's pretty good going.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So the first thing I just wanted to ask you about was there's an article by Ewan Spence in Forbes Magazine a couple of weeks ago when the iPad mini with Retina went on sale. And he had a great line, Apple approaches perfection. I want to ask you, I know we're both iPad users sporadically.
Yep.
A, do you have a mini? And B, have you seen the iPad with mini Retina?
I own an iPad mini myself.
Okay.
I haven't bought a Retina.
Yeah.
One of the guys in the office did buy one. It is a thing of beauty.
It is. Yeah.
I do think it is the perfect iPad.
Yeah.
Right? So in fact, I don't own any iPad with Retina. I've got an iPad 2 and an iPad mini. Okay. And even when the iPad 2 with Retina display came out, I guess it's the 3rd gen iPad came out, yes, it was very, very nice. But it was always my thought that if the Mini ever got Retina, it's going to be the one to get. And I got to stand by that. It is fantastic. It's light. It's so crystal clear. I've always preferred the mini form factor since I got it. It just, it's just so much more portable.
It is. Ewan Spence, he makes the point, Ewan Spence, and because he calls it a computer rather than a tablet, and he makes the point that essentially smaller iPad Air, yes, but with identical high-end spec. Yeah. And as a result, because of that high-end spec, that's why he says it is the best all-round computer.
It is. I guess some people still struggle with a lack of keyboard, and of course there's add-ons you can get, Bluetooth keyboards and so on. I found I wrote a piece for the Loop Insight magazine, and I sat in at my kitchen table and opened up the iPad and for the first time tried to use it, and I was surprised at how quick I could type on it. So I guess a lot of people
using the on-screen keyboard,
using the on-screen keyboard. So I think a lot of people's reluctance is coming from it being slightly different. Yeah. But you find if you actually give it a go, it's actually quite usable.
Well, I tried one. I was unconvinced because I liked the bigger screen. Yeah. But the Retina display, I mean, it's crystal clear. It's beautiful. You can't see the pixels.
Absolutely.
And then when you think, I can hold that in one hand, the portability is just incredible. It's like you don't have to, whereas as opposed to I carry a rucksack around with a laptop in it. Sure. You don't, that's gone. Yeah. It really is incredibly portable, and it's everything, pretty much everything that you need to do on a daily basis.
Look, most people use their computers, apart from what they have to do day in, day out in work and with very specific software. I think that if you take people's use of a computer as a leisure item, we browse the web, we do things like Twitter and Facebook and all that sort of stuff. There's really no need for a laptop.
Yeah, and there is, and more I find myself. I was slow to adopt it, but more and more I find myself using the little microphone icon on whatever platform I'm using, just to speak my instruction or my message or whatever.
Right. So you're using Siri for actually getting around your iPad?
Well, I am. I'm beginning to, and I'm beginning to. I didn't. It took ages and ages, but sometimes I think, oh, actually, this kind of works, and I use the voice commands on Android as well.
Yeah, I find actually Google's voice commands work quite well.
Yeah, they work better than Siri at the moment.
I think so.
Yeah.
I find lots of my conversations with Siri, and they are conversations. By the time I get around to doing stuff for me, usually end up me being abusive. I don't know if it's well attuned to Irish accents. I guess the real thing we're missing out on is the services you have in North America.
Yeah, that's the thing. The localized services.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a big difference. Yeah, there's a big difference. So we're willing to say we're almost going to concur with you and Spence in Forbes magazine. Apple approaches perfection with the iPad Mini Retina.
I think so. Yeah.
The next thing I want to ask you about, Dermot, is Topsy.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you were familiar with Topsy before Apple bought it. Firstly, do you know about Topsy? And B, why do you think Apple bought it?
So I was aware of Topsy, all right, but only for the novelty of searching for old tweets and stuff like that.
Vanity searches.
Vanity searches. Possibly. I was looking at it through the Xcake hashtag.
How clever was I in the past? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. How witty was it? I was looking at the Xcake hashtag the other day, and you can sort by oldest, and Xcake's a meetup of iOS developers we go to.
Yeah.
And it surprised me to see, we're going back nearly 5 years.
Yeah.
And we were able to see some kind of, I was just looking through the first 10 pages of them, and it was things like arranging the first ever meeting, or the first time that the Science Gallery offered that we could use it, and so on.
Right.
So I think it's kind of, from that point of view, I knew of it. Apple's acquisition, I guess, everything they acquire is always a surprise, and and you can't really predict what they'll always have an agenda for doing it. You can be sure Apple don't need to know what people are tweeting. There's something far more interesting behind it.
That's right. If even, I mean, both Apple and Google, we're led to believe, acquire maybe 2 or 3 companies like this, usually smaller per month.
Yeah.
That's the talk, and sometimes it can often be just to stifle competition.
Yeah, I think I doubt it in this case. I think it's something to do with a company like.
Well, this is a much bigger acquisition than the small companies they usually buy. It's $200 million, which is, yes, in Apple terms, not a huge amount of money, but that's a significant acquisition.
It is a significant acquisition, but I guess what you have to think of is big data is the new hotness, right? Everyone's talking about big data. Frankly, there's only a handful of people in the world who've actually pulled this off. Yes, Amazon do big data, Google do big data, but there's tons of these people who say, oh, we're going to be a big data play. And you have to acquire a lot of data before you can actually do anything sensible with it. So it might well be that it's the skills they bought it for. So Apple absolutely have tons and tons of data of what people are watching on iTunes and listening to on iTunes. They couldn't turn it into a social network with Ping. They failed miserably.
Yeah.
Maybe they need some other expertise to actually do something very interesting with all the information they have.
It's funny you mentioned big data, because all this talk, and in this country we have in our action plan for jobs this year, big data got a special mention as one of the disruptive measures. And so there's all this talk about big data, which we now have a name for something that a lot of us used to do anyway,
right.
Analysis.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think that we'll probably see is, I think that we'll probably see the emergence of like boutique data analysis companies, because all the data is there, and you can get most of this data. The fire hose, Bing have access to it, although don't do a whole lot with it. With the Twitter data, other people have tried, and the big play at the moment tends to be for business analytics. That's what people are doing with it. Not much Twitter data has been applied, within the consumer space, and how sort of that impulse purchasing and things like that.
Sure.
But I think that's what people are now starting to do. It's interesting to see as well, because also in this market we've just seen Twitter announcing over the last couple of weeks their Twitter ads for small business, and working pretty much like AdSense works,
right.
Selecting your campaign and targeting like that. So there does appear to be a number of strands coming together that are beginning to get interesting.
Yeah, and I guess what's actually happening is that these companies have created opportunities that we hadn't thought about before. It's not really that this was somebody's great master plan 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's that we've got to a stage where, hang on, look what we can do with this information now that we have it. Do you know what I mean? So I suspect it's, again, going back to the Apple acquisition, I suspect it's nothing got to do with being able to index tweets. It's actually being able to handle big data in intelligent ways.
Do you think it's kind of about, say, with Apple, is it about currency of thought? In the sense that, if you can overlay a lot of activity, say, about Lady Gaga's new hairdo or new album, if you can overlay a launch date and record sales and downloads onto hotspots of data in the fire hose, you can see how people react to specific things. And are they going to use it for that sort of commercial analysis, do you think?
I could see a situation where
not that I'm a huge Gaga fan, just to clarify that.
I can see a situation where they use the hive mind of data to tailor, for example, your iTunes experience. So right now in Ireland, for example, you will get a feed. You log onto iTunes, they will feature, say, albums of upcoming artists who are touring here, right? But imagine being able to do that in a more hyper-local sense. So not only can we do it for the United States, but we can do it for towns in Boston, or do you know what I mean? So
we can do it. We can do it for towns who have a record shop open right now or closed, so you can buy it online right now. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay.
So in theory, possibly, but I think I suspect we're a while off that. But you know yourself, everything that Apple does actually doesn't come to the fore for 3 or 4 years. People say, the Touch ID thing, everyone's tying back to some acquisition that happened 4 years ago.
That's right.
And everybody wondered why they were doing it. Well, obviously they had a plan for it, but it took that long to refine it and then put it into one of their products.
I suppose the next thing you wonder about is, because you don't know how much, say, Twitter would have been particularly hungry for revenue at the time these deals would have been done with Bing and Topsy. So they might have great deals that all of a sudden Apple's the buyer. Well, hang on a minute. This is now going to cost you 5 times what it would have. So they may have contracts in place, but when it comes to renewal, who knows how the dynamic of the relationship will change.
Absolutely, but I think, we're only speculating.
I know.
Obviously,
as ever.
Before you buy a company, you do your due diligence, right? So we know whether we have it for, say, the next 5 years or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But
did you use Google real-time search? Did you try that out before it disappeared?
I didn't.
Yeah.
Google suggests, it's just kind of is given now, right? So I should type.
Yeah. There was this thing about indexing tweets, and people have been trying to do it. How useful it is for various things, and then there are. Look, we've covered some of the uses there. It's interesting that there's been a lot of these startups about archiving tweets, and what to do with that fire hose of Twitter data. And Topsy are the guys who've hung on. And made a business out of it. I don't know what it probably means. It will be interesting to see. We'll know very quickly how Apple are thinking, because if Topsy stops offering its service as a third-party service, well, then all of a sudden, like Yahoo's acquisition of the news app, all of a sudden it may just be integrated into their own service, as opposed to being a business that's going to continue on its own.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do. I mean, again, you could say that if Apple closes down immediately, it means there's something great news for it. If Apple leaves it open, it's because they don't want you wondering what they're doing. Yeah. You really can't. With Apple, you just can't.
No, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Just as we're doing, as it's the Red Cert podcast, there's a podcast story about Castro.
Yes. So 2 developers from Ireland have just released, just yesterday, in fact, a new iPhone app called Castro, and it's iOS 7 only. And it's interesting because it's a very crowded market, and they've released this commercially. They're expecting to make money off it, but it made huge waves yesterday when they launched. So they in
a nutshell, what does it do?
It's a podcast app. It's a podcast client for you to subscribe into your podcast and listen to them.
So it manages them, collects them for you.
Helps you find them.
Yep.
Subscribe to them. Helps you listen to them.
Okay, helps you find them that's because that's something that has been difficult in the past.
They've taken this really interesting approach, which is, and they've written a separate blog post called their manifesto as to why they made some certain decisions. And one of their decisions is, they said the device in your hand is now powerful enough to do things like background grabbing of feeds, local notifications. Right. So the app in fact works off iTunes search only. The guys have needed to implement 0 servers. The app is standalone, which means that as they scale, they don't have a worry of a per server cost scaling, so that the economics of the app is right.
Right.
If you know what I mean. But I guess what's interesting is that I suppose there's a well-known developer in the US, Marco Arment, who has written, I think he was a founder of Tumblr, and he was a founder of the magazine, and he sold them successfully. And he's been blogging quite openly recently about the fact that he's working on a podcast app, and everyone's waiting for Marco's podcast app because the software tends to be very good. But the guys, have got the merch, they've got one out, it's really, really nice. But it was picked up by all the major Apple watchers. So Jim Dalrymple put a tweet out on it. Dan Benjamin, who runs a podcasting company, runs 5by5, he gave them a quote to put on their website to say that, this is the nearest perfect podcast app as I can find. Marco himself referred to it. Marco said, it's pretty sweet, it's not for me, but, he's writing his own.
Yeah.
John Gruber linked it up yesterday, and, John and Marco are friends. Do you know what I mean? So, they got really good splash yesterday. It was up to number 3 in Ireland when I checked earlier today. But I suspect it actually will be a commercial success story for independent developers in Ireland. Which I think
it's a good story. If that, it's success even to get up to number 3 in a day. Okay, and see what the kind of longer tail revenue of it is. But that's a great story in itself. How much does it sell for?
It sells for, I think it's $2.79. I think it's a $2.99 app.
So it's fair value.
Oh, it's very good value. But we've within the industry, we're used to people giving out about the price of an app. When you think
inevitably
how often that you use these things.
I know. We expect stuff for free all the time now.
Yeah, but like this, if you stop to think about the effort that's gone in for a start, but even if you avoid that and say, well, how much value is it giving me? Your podcast app, if you're a commuter, you might use it on the way in the morning, the way home at night.
So you'll use it for maybe 45 minutes in and out, an hour and a half a day you're using this app for.
Absolutely.
So that's 5 or 7 hours a week.
Yeah.
30 hours a month of entertainment you're getting out of this.
Absolutely. And this is again another thing that they said in their manifesto is that podcasts are entertainments, and they've specifically avoided things like little red badges to say that there's a new podcast available. So they said your podcast app shouldn't be another inbox you feel.
Okay, that's a nice psychology. That
really
that's very clever.
But they've done beautiful iOS 7 effects. It's purposely only built on iOS 7. Real kind of, if you like, ballsy decisions that they've made and put out there, and the end result is fantastic.
CASTRO?
CASTRO.fm, and the two guys that have brought it out are Porrick Kennedy and Oisin Prendeville.
Castro.fm. There's a lot of chatter about wearable computing at the moment. And Wired magazine, the current issue of Wired, I think the front page or the front cover has 2014, the breakout year for wearable. Can I ask you straight off, do you use any wearable devices?
No.
Would you?
Yes.
Okay. What would you be likely to use? Watch, fitness tracker, or something else not yet invented?
I think it's a case of the latter two. I don't think we need a wearable watch. I have a standard watch, and frankly, since I've started wearing reading glasses, I can't even read that.
Okay.
I think I'm very interested in the proliferation of these fitness wristbands and so on, because they're getting very popular. And also, I think what it's done is it's helped build this concept of gamifying your fitness. So,
do you think that's bad or good?
I think it's good. It's good. I haven't caught the bug yet.
Yeah, okay.
I hope to at some time, but
I'll wrap one for you for Christmas.
Very good. What I have noticed is people I know or remotely know, and I've started to notice things cropping up in their feed about runs they've done, or where they're toying with somebody else over, I've just beaten your speed or whatever it is.
The competitive thing is creeping in.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that. I think the internet and technology bring about things that we don't expect.
Yeah. And
this is exactly that sort of thing.
This is one, I think,
It's gamifying fitness. And obviously lots of people go out for a run on their own. But, when it's cold and it's wet, you just don't feel like going out. But if this week, if you don't go out on the cold, wet night, your buddy has gone, and he's going to beat you on this week.
Yeah.
It's that little extra.
Well,
thing
human nature is incredible like that. That competitive thing, and it will prod you to do more.
Yeah.
I think I was talking with somebody about this last week, and we were just talking about wearable in general. And I said, "Oh no, I couldn't be bothered with all that." But I think for society as a whole, because we know this year the government, well, not only ours but in other countries, are trying to tackle the obesity problem.
Sure.
And wearable devices and the competitive nature, and also in a sense, I think they're also going to become. So you have the competitive nature, but they will also become sort of aspirational devices.
Right.
So people will say, "Oh, that's quite cool. I like that," and so they'll want one as well. And if you've got one, we know the analysis is there to show that people who monitor their health are healthier.
Right.
So I think it can only be good. It's interesting about what you say about the watch. I didn't think I would find a watch useful, but I use a Martian watch, and I now that I'm wearing it, I'm not taking it off. I find myself using it all the time, which is quite good.
So what does your Martian watch do?
The things that I use the most are my Twitter feed, so direct messages and mentions come up on it. Right. It's kind of the whole Dick Tracy, so I can make and receive calls through it, which isn't bad when you're driving.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I like about it is if you hit the top button, you can talk to Siri.
Right.
So I can say send Dermot Daly a text, tell him I'll see him at 2.
Okay.
And that's neat. I'm not now. The thing is, these watches, these are kind of mid-range smartwatches. Yeah. They don't have the same tech. For instance, there's no sort of onboard technology. There's no GPS.
Sure.
So it's using the functionality of my Android or my iOS device.
Okay.
So I do think. I think smartwatches are going to have a good year, but I really think 2014 is going to be the fitness tracker is going to be big this year. And then we're going to have other wearable devices. There was a remarkable story last week. Deborah Kahn from the Wall Street Journal tweeted the story that a driver in California had gotten a ticket from police for driving with Google glasses on.
Right. Yes.
So that kind of negates some of the value for that kind of stuff. We'll have GPS and, instructions while you drive. So how we integrate all this stuff into society has yet to be, as you say, stuff often happens, nothing happens for ages, and then it all happens.
Sure. I think to some extent, some of the examples you've given me of how you use your watch, I don't think they have as wide an appeal. So if you take, for example, when I'm in my car with the car hands-free kit, I can talk to Siri.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't find myself using that very often, but I can do it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't need a watch for that, if you know what I mean? Most iPhone owners that I know, if they're more than 2 feet away from their phone, they start to twitch anyway. So they're still getting their direct messages and their SMS and so on. And even if you think about that, the watch is going to go over Bluetooth. It's probably Bluetooth low energy, so you're within proximity of your phone anyway, right? So. I just suspect we don't know what it is.
No, we don't.
Going to be,
No, we don't know what the big use case will be, for them. I have an experiment going on a couple of weeks ago on Down to Business with Bobby Kerr. At the end of the show, I kind of landed one on Bobby, and so we were just finishing up, and I said, before we go, I want to give you some stuff for you to try out. Yeah. And Bobby uses a tablet, and he kind of likes gadgets, but I don't think he's not a real absorber of or user of this kind of stuff. So I gave him a fitness tracker, I gave him a Martian watch, I gave him a Wi-Fi scales.
Right.
I could weigh myself all day with that. That's so much fun.
Yeah.
And I gave him a little Canon Legria Mini, which is one of these high quality video blogging cameras.
Right.
So instead of that dreadful quality stuff you see on YouTube a lot of the time, this is HD. This is really cool.
So like a GoPro kind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I gave him them. He's using them for 2 weeks, and so actually this Saturday we're going to see how he got on with them, because maybe he didn't take them out of the box. I don't know. And but I'm really curious to see how the average user with an interest in technology will adapt to them.
Yeah, I think it will change people's behaviours. And you'll find that there's lots of men of a certain age who are more interested in their gadgets than what the gadget is for. You know what I mean? So it might actually be the thing that gets you out on the streets.
True. It's as funny as you mentioned men of a certain age, like the mammals, the cycling thing has gone out of control. Men in Lycra are everywhere. Of my age and older. And they're saying, where did that come from?
Yeah.
You know, and now I think will they all end up monitoring, tracking? You know, I think so.
It'll be interesting to see. You know, I'm talking about the type of people who say I'm going to take up golf, so they go out and spend a fortune on a great set of clubs before they know how to swing one. Right?
Yeah,
so it's that sort of thing that might have actually particular appeal with. Interestingly, though, speaking of wearable, I did get a look at the Galaxy Gear. So I've had
what did you think
on my wrist at the launch of it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, but it's interesting in the sense of a version 1 interest.
Yeah.
The camera wasn't of very good quality. The watch itself is a watch. It's nice. You know, similar things you can, you can get your SMS and talk to your phone and so on. Again, like I say, I'd almost look at it as a tech demo. You know? It wasn't something I found particularly
proof of concept
appealing.
in a way, kind of.
You know, if you're going to put a camera onto something, why put something way lesser than what's on your phone?
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? There has to be an approach of, well, this you're changing things around a bit here, so you better give some really compelling reasons. So if it was almost the opposite, it was go, do you know what, we've got a camera on your wrist, but it's actually much better than the thing on your phone.
Yeah.
Well, then you're more likely to say, well, I want one of them.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's a watch with a crappy phone.
Yeah, I know, yeah, okay. So just before we finish, it's nearly Christmas, and just want to talk about Tapadoo for a minute.
Yep.
A lot of businesses, say retail and people in technology retail, this week is chaotic for them.
Sure.
I can testify to that. And in other businesses as well. What about a Tapadoo in app development? What happens kind of this time of year? Is it just endless lunches for you guys? Or what's going on?
There is a bit of a slowdown.
Yeah.
Right? So what you do see is there's not a lot of people making decisions.
Right.
I would say we've got a lot of projects at a kind of an 80% stage right now.
For delivery in the new year?
No, even for delivery.
Delivery now,
so, yeah. But what that will result in is, you know, we probably won't start anything meaty till the new year. We've plenty on, but in terms of big projects, nothing right now. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We're actually bringing that load of them to completion. So I think it's interesting. We are running a few meetings over the next couple of weeks, but you just know that the decision making isn't until the new year. There's a few bits and pieces that are happening around people liking to spend their IT budget.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So there's a bit of that going on, all right.
Yeah.
But, you know, nobody's going to be thinking of a massive advertising campaign in the middle of December.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were all decided a long time ago.
And so what about, say, generally speaking, 2013 as a business year in the app development business? Better than last year?
Definitely better than last year, yeah.
And so you think, things look pretty good for next year?
There's no slowdown in demand.
No slowdown,
Absolutely
very
not.
good.
I mean, I think the market's maturing. We still find ourselves doing a lot of education to people who don't know really what the app space is and how they can utilise it. But then the other side of that, we're seeing the people we've worked with before, you know, now really starting to get mobile and really starting to get stuck into it. So there's certain maturing of the market. It's nearly 5 years since you can write on an iPhone now. So certainly it's a very interesting time. And I guess one of the things that I think is going to be fascinating is the onslaught of iBeacons.
Yeah.
So we did our first project involving iBeacons just a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
And it was for a major corporate who had their European Innovation Centre in Dublin. The company itself had just taken on a new CEO, and it was his first visit to the Irish operation. And they came to us and said, we're thinking of doing something on iPad, but we want to impress them. Have you any ideas? And we put together this demo where, as the guy walked around his office, the content was coming up on the iPad relevant to the area he was currently walking in.
Fantastic.
And we did that by dotting beacons around the building. And it was very successful.
And what physical form does the beacon take?
It's interesting. A beacon, it's just a Bluetooth device advertising a very specific profile, right? And when I say specific, it's actually quite trivial. So Apple haven't published it, but lots of people have reverse engineered it. It's that simple. So it turns out there's not too many on the market just yet. But so what we did is we wrote software so that physical phones can become iBeacons.
Very good.
Now what's very interesting there is if you've a retail outlet that is showing any iOS device from, say, any current iOS device, it can act as a beacon.
Yeah.
So the thing about that is interesting is somebody's walking around, they're coming in contact with the beacon, and the beacon can give you relevant information. So so for that particular project, we used individuals' actual handsets stacked as beacons. We just wrote a bit of software that said, which beacon do you want to be? I'll be that one.
Yeah.
But I have received in the last couple of days a couple of things called estimates, which was a Kickstarter project. Estimates are about, I guess, 3 inches tall, 2 inches wide, and then about 1.5 inches deep. They're kind of silicon rubber with a sticky back, but inside it there's a beacon, so we can literally stick them on the wall, stick them around the office, and then we can do location-based stuff, indoor location at a very, very short rate.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting stuff.
So that's, I mean, there's potential there for everything from healthcare to retail to manufacturing. I mean, there's a lot of industries that are room-specific information becomes very valuable.
Yeah, I think it'll revolutionise retail in particular, right? So, you know, we've been taught about, you know, ages ago, you know, everybody's been talking about you get into a location and people start throwing offers at you.
Yeah.
Think about that if it's properly hyper-localised. The example I like to think of, Tesco, another big data play, incidentally, with their club card, right?
Yeah.
Now, imagine we have a situation where, you know, Tesco run different beer sales every couple of weeks. They could have a beacon on their beer aisle, and as you know, somebody is close by, the beacon wakes up and lets the server know that there's somebody there. They can be sending an offer back to that guy and say, do you know, we've checked his basket. He's bought Miller, he's keen on 6 times in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
We better let him know that we've got a special on today. Do you know what I mean? So you could get into some really interesting. I know people really fear the privacy of this stuff, but frankly, if you've got a club card, you've given
Well, you give it up. You give it up for the reward.
You have, absolutely.
And so, can I ask you there, right? So, say at the moment, say Diesel have a project going on in their in some stores, I think, where you know you bring your phone close to a label. It checks if the size, your size, based on your profile, is in stock. If it's not, it tells you when you're at another store. The beacon idea, I think, is better because there's, you know, I don't have to take my phone out of my pocket to check this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so what about the notification method? All of a sudden, though, will we be bombarded, say, walking around a supermarket or in a shop by all these messages and offers? Or is there more sort of, you know, is there a less intrusive way of telling us, be it via glasses or, you know, something, or in-store screens? What do you think? Or do you think it's about the device?
So I think it is about the device. The granularity is, and even when Apple were demoing this, they suggested how you handle granularity and not do that, obviously. Obviously, they're not going to be able to control that. But remember, the beacon is what stays static, typically, right? So that's in a location somewhere. And basically, you have to run an app that's looking for that beacon. It's not just any beacon. It has to be, you know, you kind of predefine your own beacons. So the situation is that I have chosen to run the Diesel app or whatever. So then what it can do is, even if the app's gone into the background, it can be notified that it's come in range of a beacon, and then the app must react. So we would typically do a local notification. It's just a pop-up on your screen.
But that means you've got to have your phone out.
Well,
you know, I'm shopping.
Okay, so not quite, right? So that's if it wants to notify you, right? But what'll actually happen is the app gets woken up to say it's come within range of a beacon. The app can do whatever it wants then, like send a message off to a server, right? So you could have a situation, for example, you've got in-store displays, okay?
And I'm notified by the display.
So your phone tells the store that this person is in by, you know, it's got some level of identity in you. And then the on-screen displays are now tailored for you. Do you get me?
Yeah.
You won't have it. Your phone isn't even done a local notification. It hasn't popped up. So
I'm with you. So that's kind of the Minority Report hoarding. That's that version of it. I quite like the idea of glasses. Would you wear Google glasses or a similar product?
It'll have to change drastically.
Okay.
I have had them on my head.
Yeah.
I made a prediction when I first saw Google Glasses. I said that I wasn't very charitable. I said that the first person I come across wearing Google Glass will either be a Google employee or, well, I wasn't nice about the type of person.
Right.
It turned out the first person who had them on was two of the things I'd
Right,
said.
okay. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I've only seen them on Google employees and, if you like, Uber nerds I don't mean that in a negative way, but
yeah, I know.
But it's
very early adopters.
It's a very early adopter thing at the moment. You know?
Okay.
I haven't been convinced by it. It's gimmicky. I know it can produce really, really good stuff, but people are weird about looking at you even more.
Well, they are.
Even in San Francisco when I saw people wearing them. It's
and the privacy element is just ferocious.
Yeah, I think when you're in
particularly in Europe now. Our law. Yeah,
we take privacy even more seriously.
We do,
but even just being in the company of someone with them, it's just a bit odd.
It is. Yeah. We're going to talk about that another day, and in a couple of weeks we're going to talk about your technology resolutions for 2014.
Wow.
Well, I can't wait for that one. Dermot Daly, co-founder and CEO of Tapadoo, thanks a lot.